Hello, my name is Rachel Murphy. I will be discussing my instructional plan and presentation for session 7 of this class. I will be teaching a lesson to a student who is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. He is self-contained within the special ed classroom. We will be teaching a math lesson that helps him identify the numbers 1 through 10 and helps him match the numbers 1 through 10 to different item groups. The goal for this student is that he will be able to orally identify numbers 1 through 10 using number cards, and that he will be able to match the number cards to the item group. An example would be he would be able to pick up the number 2 card and match it to the group of 2 Unifix cubes that are laying on the table. The essential vocabulary that I will be introducing to him will be 3 different words. Identify, which means to establish or indicate what something is. Matching, which means something that corresponds or is complementary in some way. And orally, which means by means of speech. His formative assessments will be given in many different ways throughout the small group lessons, just by me questioning him. What number is this, or how many items are in this group. Also, just observing him with a checklist will also be a formative observation or assessment. And then my summative, he will have a specific number of tasks that he has to complete by identifying the numbers and matching the numbers to the groups of Unifix cubes on the table. And for him to pass that assessment, he will have to master each part that I'm giving him. The student is primarily nonverbal. However, when it comes to counting and saying his numbers, he normally does that pretty well. Some days he just refuses to talk, but typically he will say his numbers, his colors, hi, hello, goodbye, things like that. So we can typically count on him having some verbal communication throughout the day, but he's not going to be able to carry on a full conversation with you. He does have quite a few sensory needs. He sits on a wobble cushion, and then he also needs his back and arms rubbed for him to calm down quite often, and they have this special bristle brush that they use for that. His personal aid is very beneficial in working with him and rubbing on his back and his arms while he's learning to help him learn. If he does have a meltdown, typically 5 minutes of some iPad time calms him down, and then he can come back to learning. He can currently count from 1 to 10, just counting out loud. So we're really focusing on putting the word number 1 to the actual number 1, and then putting the number 1 card with the item group of number 1. This lesson will require Unifix cubes, which I have here, and number cards for the numbers 1 through 10, which I have here also. The teacher will have a checklist to keep track of observations and assessments. Technology will only be required in the case of a behavior intervention, and then the other behavior interventions needed are the wobble cushion and the small bristle brush that helps calm him down. So I'll begin this lesson by having the student count from 1 through 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at his pace. We'll do that a couple times. We'll do it together. I'll let him do it. I'll have him listen to me. After he has counted from 1 through 10 a couple times, then I will give him a card. And I'll ask him what number's on this card, and he would say the number 1. And then we'll move on to the next card, and he would say the number 2. And we will go through identifying these cards. This will be the first task that is kind of challenging for him. There may be some that he doesn't really know. So that will give me the opportunity to make note. Well, he doesn't know what the number 5 looks like. So then we can continue to practice those numbers. Once we have done that, then we will take the cards and practice putting them in number order from 1 through 10. This lesson plan can span over many days because sometimes it does take him a little while to get really deep into a lesson. So we may work on Monday, we may work on identifying the cards, and then Tuesday we may begin working on putting the cards in number order. After we have the cards in number order, I'm going to explain to him that he has shown me 3 different ways that he knows these numbers. And now we're going to start using these numbers to identify groups of cubes. So then I will move on to the middle of my lesson where I will lay out groups of cubes. Right now they're in a stick just because it's easier for me to hold, but I would lay them out separate so he can count them. And I'll want him to count them 1 to 1, either by picking them up or just touching them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then once he can count the group of 5, then we may move on to a group of 8 for him to count. And I'm going to really reinforce his 1-to-1 counting with these cubes. After we've done that, then we're going to mix the two, counting the cubes and labeling it with a number card. This is going to be the main part of our lesson that we will repeat multiple times, multiple days in a row, to really reinforce his strategy of identifying the numbers, counting the cubes correctly, and then putting the two skills together. At the end of the observation cycle, a summative assessment will be given. I'm going to explain to him that we've worked on all of these skills to help him identify the numbers, count the cubes, and then put the two skills together. And then I'll explain he's going to be doing 3 different tasks for me. The first task, he will be identifying the numbers on the number cards. The second task, he will be counting the cubes. And then the third task is going to be to put them together just like we did in the lesson. 5 cubes goes with the number 5 card. If he can do these with 90% accuracy, then he will pass the summative assessment. If he cannot pass the summative assessment, we'll kind of look at our checklist and our formative assessments and see kind of where he's struggling and go back and reinforce those activities and then come back to the summative assessment at the end. So that is the lesson that I have written up and I will teach to my student. The student is actually in my class and I do plan to work with him on this skill. So I hope that is a good explanation of the lesson I'm planning to teach. Thank you.